My name is Claire Donovan. I was 36 years old, and by the time my younger sister lifted her wine glass during our family's New Year's Eve dinner, I already knew exactly what she was about to do. She had that smile, the one she wore whenever she was about to say something cruel, and then pretend everyone else was too sensitive to understand the joke. "To another year," she announced, raising her glass. Then she looked directly at me. "And to Claire, maybe this will finally be the year she finds someone." The table erupted. My cousins laughed. My aunt covered her mouth. Even my mother smiled into her glass. My sister continued, "Seriously, Claire, you're 36. At this point, are you even dating anymore? Or have you officially given up?" The laughter grew louder. I sat there quietly, my hand resting beside my untouched champagne. My mother waved dismissively. "Oh, don't be so serious. Natalie is only teasing." I looked at my sister. Then I smiled. "Don't worry," I said. "I haven't given up." Natalie smirked. "Well, that's good. Maybe someday you'll have something exciting to tell us." I picked up my glass. "I do." The laughter stopped. I took one slow sip. Then I placed the glass back on the table. "I've been married for almost 2 years. My mother's smile disappeared. My sister froze. My father slowly lowered his fork. Someone at the far end of the table whispered, "What?" I looked around at the people who had spent years treating my personal life like family entertainment. "His name is Daniel Cross." The room went completely silent. My sister's face lost all its color, because Daniel Cross wasn't just my husband. He was the man my family's company had been begging to meet for the last 8 months. The man they believed could save them from bankruptcy. The man whose investment committee was currently reviewing the proposal my sister had proudly presented as her own work. But that wasn't even the worst part. I reached for the thick blue folder sitting beside my father's plate. Inside were documents bearing my name, my credentials, my professional analysis, and a signature I had never written. By the time that dinner ended, my family would learn who I had married, why I had kept him a secret, and exactly how far my sister had gone to make herself look successful. And before I tell you what happened when my husband finally spoke to my family, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. My name is Claire Donovan, and for most of my life, I had been the daughter my family remembered only when something needed fixing. The Donovan Group had been in business for nearly 4 decades. My grandfather had started it as a small construction company in Portland, Oregon. Over the years, it became a respected restoration and development firm, specializing in historic hotels, theaters, public buildings, and old industrial properties. From the outside, we looked successful. Our name appeared in magazines. Our offices occupied an entire renovated warehouse. My parents drove expensive cars. My sister hosted charity events and appeared in local business publications. But behind the polished photographs, the company was bleeding money. Several major projects had gone over budget. A lender had begun demanding additional guarantees. 2 contractors were threatening lawsuits over unpaid invoices, and the company's largest redevelopment project was dangerously close to collapsing. That project was the Harbor District Exchange, a massive abandoned railway terminal that the city wanted transformed into a mixed-use cultural center, with restaurants, performance spaces, offices, and a public market. The project needed an enormous amount of capital, and there was only one serious investment group still considering it. Cross Urban Development, Daniel Cross's company. My family had been trying to secure a meeting with him since the previous spring. They had sent emails, letters, introductions through mutual acquaintances, invitations to private dinners. My sister had even spent an entire weekend at a charity event trying to get close to one of Daniel's senior partners. They had no idea she was trying to reach my husband. I had never told them. Not because I was ashamed of Daniel. The opposite was true. Daniel was the most patient, intelligent, and grounded person I had ever known. I had kept him separate from my family because my family had a habit of turning everything they touched into a competition. My sister Natalie was the favorite. Everyone knew it. She was beautiful, outgoing, charming, and completely comfortable taking credit for things other people had done. I was the opposite. Quiet, practical. The person who noticed problems before they became disasters. I worked as a structural preservation consultant. My specialty was analyzing historic buildings and determining how they could be reinforced without destroying their original character. It was technical work. Difficult work. The kind that required years of training and a great deal of patience. My sister once described my job to a client as looking at old walls and telling people how much they could spend fixing them. My mother laughed. I did not. But I said nothing. That was what I had always done. I stayed quiet. I solved the problem. And then I watched someone else receive the credit. The first time I met Daniel, we were both working on a historic hotel renovation in Seattle. We disagreed during the first meeting. Completely. He believed part of the original West Wing could be saved. I believed the foundation was too compromised. We argued for nearly an hour. Then I spent the next 2 nights running calculations. He did the same. 3 days later, we met again. He was right about one section. I was right about another. We changed the design. That became our relationship. Neither of us needed to win every argument. We just wanted to find the right answer. We began dating quietly. There were no dramatic announcements, no social media posts, no family introductions. We spent evenings cooking together. We walked through old neighborhoods. We visited buildings that were scheduled for demolition and imagined what they might have become. Daniel knew my family history. He knew about Natalie. He knew how my mother always defended her. He knew how my father avoided conflict until the damage was impossible to ignore. And he understood why I hesitated to introduce him. One night, after Natalie had taken credit for a report I had prepared for the family business, I told Daniel I was thinking about cutting my family off completely. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said something I never forgot. You don't have to destroy the bridge just because they keep charging you a toll to cross it. So I created boundaries instead. I stopped doing unpaid work for the family company. I stopped sharing confidential information. I stopped allowing Natalie to use my contacts. And most importantly, I stopped explaining every decision I made. A year and a half later, Daniel and I got married. There were only 12 people at the ceremony. No family members. Not because I wanted to punish anyone, because I wanted one day that belonged entirely to me. We were married in a restored train station outside Tacoma. There was no giant reception, no elaborate decorations, just a small ceremony, dinner afterward, and the people who genuinely wanted us to be happy. I wore a simple ivory dress. Daniel wore a dark suit. And for the first time in my life, I made a major decision without wondering how my family would react. I wore my wedding ring on a thin chain during work because I frequently worked around heavy equipment and construction sites. My family never noticed, or perhaps they never looked closely enough. Either way, I said nothing. Then came the Harbor District project. My father asked me to review some technical information connected to the old railway terminal. He said he wanted my professional opinion. I agreed. That was my first mistake. I prepared a detailed structural assessment. It contained years of specialized research. I explained which portions of the building could be saved, which areas required reinforcement, which materials should be avoided, and how the project could remain financially viable without destroying the historic structure. I sent my father a preliminary report. He thanked me. Then he stopped responding. 2 months later, I saw the family's investor proposal, and I recognized my work. Not similar work. My work. Entire sections had been copied. My diagrams had been included. My technical conclusions had been repeated word for word. But my name was gone. Instead, the proposal claimed that Natalie had led the project's technical strategy. Then I saw something even worse. A section titled, Senior Preservation Advisor, Claire Donovan. Underneath it was a statement claiming that I had formally agreed to serve as the company's lead consultant. I had not. At the bottom of the page was a digital signature. My signature. Except I had never signed the document. I immediately contacted my attorney. Then I contacted Daniel's legal department. I did not tell my family. I wanted to know exactly how far the deception went before confronting them. That was how I discovered the proposal had already been sent to Daniel's investment committee. My family's company had submitted confidential work belonging to me. They had used my professional identity, and they had attached a forged signature to make it appear that I had officially endorsed the project. The strangest part was that Daniel's team did not know he was married to me. He had recused himself from the initial review because of our relationship. His legal department contacted my firm independently. They wanted to verify whether I had authorized the material. I told them the truth. No, I had not. The investigation began quietly. And then, 2 weeks later, my sister decided to make me the joke of the family. That was how I ended up sitting at the New Year's Eve dinner table with the entire family laughing at my supposed loneliness. Natalie had no idea that the man she was trying to impress was my husband. She had no idea that her proposal contained my stolen work. And she had no idea that Daniel's legal team had already identified multiple problems with the submission. When I told them I was married, the room changed instantly. My father looked confused. My mother looked betrayed. Natalie looked terrified. But she recovered quickly. She always did. "You're married?" she asked. "Yes." "To who?" "Daniel Cross." Her glass nearly slipped from her hand. My mother stared at me. "Daniel Cross?" I nodded. "The man who had been rejecting their calls for months. The man whose company was reviewing their proposal. The man my sister had spent weeks trying to impress. My father finally spoke. "How long?" "Almost 2 years." My mother's voice became strangely quiet. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at her. "Because I knew you would turn him into an opportunity." No one moved. Then Natalie laughed. But this time, there was no humor in it. "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" She glanced toward the blue folder. I placed my hand on top of it. "Do you want to explain why my confidential work is in your investor proposal?" Her face changed, only for a second. But I saw it. My father saw it too. My mother immediately stepped in. "Claire, this is not the time. You made my marriage a topic of public entertainment 5 minutes ago. This is a family matter." "No." I looked down at the folder. "This became a business matter when someone used my identity without my permission." Natalie pushed back from the table. "You helped us with the project." "I gave Dad a preliminary technical assessment." "You knew we were using the information." "I did not authorize you to present me as a member of your team." "You're making this sound criminal." "I am describing what happened." My father picked up the proposal. His hands were shaking slightly. "What exactly is wrong with it?" I opened to the relevant page. "These projections are mine." I turned another page. "These diagrams are mine." Another. "This copyright notice was removed." Then I pointed to the signature, and "this is not my signature." My mother went pale. Natalie stared at me. For the first time that evening, she had nothing clever to say. Then my phone rang. Daniel. I answered. "Are you okay?" "Yes." "Do you want me to come over?" I looked around the table, at my mother, my father, my sister. The proposal containing my stolen work. Not yet. Natalie suddenly leaned forward. "Is that him?" I put the call on speaker. Daniel's voice filled the room. "Hello?" My mother immediately changed her tone. "Daniel, this is Elaine Donovan. I think there has been a misunderstanding." "No," Daniel said calmly. "I don't believe there has." The room went still. My sister looked at me. Daniel continued. "Our compliance department has already documented the unauthorized use of Claire's work and credentials." Natalie interrupted. "She is emotionally involved in this." "That may be true," Daniel replied, "but the documents are not emotional." Nobody spoke. He continued. "Your company submitted technical material belonging to Claire. You represented her as an authorized advisor, and a signature was attached to that representation without her authorization." My mother tried to interrupt. "We were preparing a working proposal. Then you should have labeled it accurately." My sister's voice sharpened. "Are you threatening us?" "No." Daniel paused. "I'm informing you that Cross Urban Development will not proceed with the proposal under its current circumstances." My father's face collapsed. "Daniel, I am sorry, Richard, but this cannot be handled as a family disagreement." I looked down at the table. For years, my family had treated me like a resource. Now, for the first time, my name was being protected by a system they could not manipulate with tears, guilt, or family history. Daniel's voice softened. "Claire, call me when you leave." "I will." I ended the call. My mother looked at me. "You are going to destroy this company." I stood up. "No." I picked up the blue folder. "Your choices did that." Natalie rose too. "You think you're better than us now?" I looked at her. "No." I paused. "I think I finally stopped letting you stand on top of me." Then I walked out. Behind me, my mother called my name. But I kept walking. because for the first time in my life, I understood something. Leaving the room was not abandoning my family. Sometimes it was the only way to stop abandoning myself. The next morning, I woke up to 27 missed calls. 21 were from my mother, 4 were from my father, 2 were from Natalie. I did not return any of them. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with Daniel across from me and the blue folder between us, the same folder I had carried out of my family's house the night before. Daniel had barely slept. Neither had I. "Are you sure you want to go through this now?" he asked. I looked at the folder. "I've been avoiding it for years." Then I opened it. The first page was the investor proposal. The second was my structural assessment. The third was a financial summary. I stopped. "Daniel." He leaned forward. "What?" I turned the page toward him. "Look at the guarantees." He read the names silently. Then his expression changed. "What is your name doing here?" I stared at the document. There it was. Claire Donovan, listed as a proposed personal guarantor for a portion of the project's financing. I had never agreed to it. I had never seen the document. And yet my name appeared beside a projected net worth that was not even accurate. "How did they get this information?" I whispered. Daniel picked up another page. "Your company must have supplied it." "I don't own the company." "I know. Then why would I be listed as a guarantor?" He didn't answer immediately, because the answer was becoming obvious. My family had not simply used my work. They had been preparing to use my financial position, my income, my assets, and possibly my marriage. I felt something cold move through my chest. "What does this mean?" Daniel leaned back. "It means your sister may have been presenting you as part of the financial structure of the deal." "Without my permission?" "Yes." I closed the folder. For a few seconds, I could not speak. Then my phone began ringing again. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, another message appeared. "Claire, please call me. This has gotten completely out of control." I stared at the words. Out of control. As if the problem was my reaction. Not the forged signature. Not the stolen work. Not the false financial information. Not the fact that my family had placed my name inside a multi-million-dollar proposal without asking me. Daniel watched me. "You don't have to answer." "I know." I opened the message. Then I typed one sentence. "I will communicate through counsel regarding all business matters." I sent it. My mother called immediately. I turned off my phone. For the next 3 days, my family attempted everything. My father sent a long email explaining that he had never personally approved the signature. My mother sent emotional messages about family loyalty. Natalie sent a single text. "You are seriously doing this to us?" I read it twice. Then I deleted it. On the 4th day, my attorney called. "Claire, I need you to come in." I knew from her voice that something had changed. When I arrived at her office, she placed a new file on the desk. "We found more documents." I sat down. "More," she nodded. "The signature appears on at least 4 separate documents." My stomach tightened. "What documents?" 2 financing applications, a consultant authorization, and a preliminary letter of support. I stared at her. "Who submitted them?" "Your sister's office." I closed my eyes. My attorney continued. "There's something else." She slid another document across the desk. "This is a draft internal memo." I read the first paragraph, then the second. My hands began to shake. The memo discussed restructuring the family business. It listed possible sources of emergency capital. At the top of the list was my name. Underneath it was a sentence. "Claire will cooperate once the cross relationship becomes serious." I looked up. "What does that mean?" My attorney's expression was careful. "It suggests your family expected your husband to become a financial resource." I laughed. But there was nothing funny about it. They had not known I was married. They had not known Daniel was my husband. But they had apparently assumed that if I ever became connected to someone wealthy or influential, I would eventually bring that person into the family business. I remembered all the times my mother had asked whether I was seeing anyone, not because she wanted to know if I was happy, because she wanted to know whether I had met someone useful. The realization hurt more than I expected. My attorney placed another document in front of me. "There's also a deadline." I read it. The company's primary lender had given Bennett Donovan Group until February 10th to secure new financing. If they failed, the lender could begin foreclosure proceedings against several company assets. I stared at the date. "How bad is the situation?" Very bad. How bad? She looked at me. Your family's company may already be insolvent. I sat silently. The business had employed dozens of people who had nothing to do with Natalie, nothing to do with the forged documents, nothing to do with the lies. And now they were all in danger because my family had spent years pretending the company was healthier than it was. That night, Daniel and I sat on the balcony of our apartment. The city lights stretched below us. I don't want people to lose their jobs, I said. Daniel looked at me. That's not your responsibility. I know, but you still feel responsible. I looked down at my hands. That's the problem, isn't it? For most of my life, I had confused being capable with being responsible for everything. If my family had a crisis, I fixed it. If Natalie made a mistake, I cleaned it up. If my parents made a bad decision, I found a way to soften the consequences. And every time I did, they learned the same lesson. Claire will handle it. Daniel reached across the table. Helping people is not the same as protecting the people who harmed you. I looked at him. What if there is a way to save the employees without saving the people who created the mess? He smiled slightly. Then find that way. The next morning, I contacted an independent restructuring specialist. Not someone connected to my family. Not someone recommended by my father. Someone completely independent. We reviewed the company's finances. The results were worse than I had imagined. There were unpaid contractors, delayed payroll obligations, short-term loans taken out to cover older loans, and a massive amount of money tied up in the Harbor District proposal. The project had been treated as the company's salvation. Without it, the company had almost no path forward. But the financial records revealed something else. Natalie had personally approved several expenses that had never appeared in the official project budget. Luxury travel, private events, consulting fees paid to companies connected to her friends. When I asked about them, the restructuring specialist looked at me. Do you know where this money went? I shook my head. Then you need to find out. That afternoon, my father finally came to my office. I almost didn't let him in, but when I saw his face, I changed my mind. He looked exhausted. Older than he had a week earlier, he sat across from me. I didn't know about the forged signature. I believe you. He looked surprised. But you knew about the proposal. Yes. You knew my work was being used. He looked down. I knew some of your analysis had been included. Did you know my name was being used as an advisor? No. Did you know I was listed as a financial guarantor? His head lifted sharply. What? I pushed the document across the desk. He read it. His face changed. I never approved this. But someone did. He sat back. For the first time, I saw something I had rarely seen in my father. Fear. What are you going to do? I looked at him. I don't know yet. He nodded slowly. Then he said something that made me realize how much he had been hiding. Your mother and Natalie have been trying to keep the company alive for almost a year. I stared at him. By using my name? He didn't answer. That was answer enough. Before he left, I asked him one question. Why didn't you tell me? He looked toward the window, because I thought I could fix it before you ever had to know. I almost smiled. The irony was painful. That's what everyone always says before the problem becomes mine. He had no response. After he left, I sat alone in my office. Then my phone rang. It was Natalie. I almost ignored her, but something made me answer. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally, she said, You've always hated me. I leaned back. No. Then why are you doing this? Because you used my name. You act like I planned everything. Did you sign the documents? Silence. Did you use my work? Another silence. Did you tell people I had agreed to be involved? Her voice became quieter. Things were complicated. No, Natalie. I looked out the window. They were simple. You wanted the deal. You needed my expertise, and you believed I would eventually clean up whatever you did. She began crying. Then she said the one thing I had never expected. I thought you would help me. I closed my eyes. There it was. The entire truth. She had not believed I would forgive her. Just she had believed I would rescue her. Because I always had. I spoke quietly. That's exactly why you kept doing it. Then I ended the call. 2 days later, Daniel's legal team sent a formal notice. Cross Urban Development was officially withdrawing from the Harbor District proposal. The reason was not my marriage. It was the false documentation, the unauthorized use of professional material, the questionable financial disclosures, and the forged signature. My family's last hope disappeared in a single letter. That evening, my mother came to my apartment. I had not invited her. She stood outside my door holding a black leather binder. "Please," she said, "just let me explain." I should have closed the door. Instead, I let her inside. She placed the binder on my dining table. "This is a plan." I opened it. The first page was titled Family Continuity Agreement. I read the first paragraph. Then I looked up. "What is this?" My mother took a breath. "We can still save the company." I turned the page, and then I saw the proposed ownership structure. Daniel would provide the capital. I would become a board member. My mother would remain in control, and Natalie would continue running the company's development division. I looked at my mother. "You want my husband to invest in the company." "Not invest." "Then what?" She hesitated. "Acquire a controlling interest." I stared at her. "And Natalie keeps running the company?" "She made mistakes. She forged my signature. That can be handled." I closed the binder. My mother reached across the table. "Claire, 47 employees depend on us." I looked at her hand, then at the binder, then back at her. "How many of them know you plan to use my husband to save the company?" She said nothing. I stood. "Leave." Her face collapsed. "Claire." "No." I picked up the binder and handed it back to her. "You came here asking me to sacrifice my marriage, my money, and my reputation to protect the people who used all three without my permission." She began crying. "You would let the entire family business disappear?" I opened the door. "No." I looked at her. "I would let the truth decide what deserves to survive." And for the first time, my mother understood something my sister had never understood. I was no longer the daughter who would quietly fix everything. I was the person who had finally decided that consequences belonged to the people who created them. The next morning, I made a decision. I would not save Bennett Donovan Group, but I would not allow innocent employees to lose everything because my family had spent years hiding the truth. I hired an independent restructuring attorney. No family connections, no favors, no secret deals, just facts. Within a week, the truth became impossible to ignore. The company owed millions. Several major contractors had not been paid. The Harbor District project had been carrying the entire business financially. And the documents my mother had brought me were not a rescue plan. They were a trap. Daniel would provide the money, I would provide the expertise, and Natalie would remain in control. They wanted to use my marriage to preserve the exact system that had created the disaster. I refused. Then the investigation uncovered something even worse. Natalie had personally instructed an employee to remove my copyright information from my technical drawings. The employee had saved the email. The message was simple: "Take Claire's name off. We're presenting this under our company." When I saw it, I felt strangely calm. For years, my family had called everything a misunderstanding, a joke, a mistake, a formatting issue. But this was different. There was an instruction. There was a decision. There was proof. I sent the evidence to my attorney. 3 days later, Natalie called me. "You wanted this," she said. I was sitting in my office. "What?" "The company failing. You always wanted Dad to see that I wasn't good enough." I closed my eyes. "You did this to yourself. You think you're so perfect now because you married Daniel?" "No." I looked at the documents on my desk. "I think I'm finally refusing to pay for your mistakes." She began crying. Then she said, "If the company collapses, people will lose their jobs." "I know. Then help us. I am helping the employees, not us." There was the truth. She didn't want help for the employees. She wanted protection for herself. I ended the call. 2 weeks later, the lender issued its final notice. Bennett Donovan Group had until February 10th to secure financing or enter formal restructuring. My father came to my office again. This time, he looked defeated. "Your mother wants you to reconsider." "I won't." "She says you're destroying the family." I looked at him. "Your family destroyed the company by pretending everything was fine." He sat silently. Then I placed a proposal in front of him. "There is another option." He read it. An independent restructuring. The sale of non-essential assets. A new employee-owned restoration company. Existing workers would have the opportunity to keep their jobs and purchase shares. The family would lose control. But the employees would have a chance to preserve the work. My father stared at the proposal. "Would Daniel be involved?" only through an open process, no special treatment. And you? I would provide paid consulting if the workers' cooperative wins the contract. He looked at me. You would help them? Yes. Even after everything, I looked down at the proposal. I'm not trying to punish people who had nothing to do with this. My father nodded slowly. Then he whispered, I should have protected you. It was the first time he had ever said it. I looked at him. Yes. He lowered his head, and for once, neither of us tried to pretend that everything was okay. The restructuring began. Natalie fought it. My mother fought it. But the documents were already in the hands of investigators. The forged signature, the stolen technical work, the false financial information, the emails, everything. There was no family argument powerful enough to erase evidence. On February 10th, Bennett Donovan Group officially entered restructuring. The family lost control. But 39 employees received offers from the new cooperative. The company name disappeared. The work did not. Then, 1 month later, Natalie received the consequences she had spent years avoiding. She was barred from leading municipal redevelopment contracts for 3 years. Not because I was married to Daniel. Not because I wanted revenge. Because she had used false documents and misrepresented professional credentials. When she called me, she was crying. Are you happy now? I thought about it. No. That answer surprised her. I wanted the truth to matter. There was silence. Then she asked, Do you hate me? I looked at the wedding ring on my finger. No. Then why didn't you save me? I answered honestly, because saving you would have meant destroying myself again. She said nothing. Neither did I. Then the call ended. For the first time in my life, I understood something clearly. Forgiveness did not mean returning to the same position. Love did not mean unlimited access. And helping someone did not mean protecting them from every consequence of their own choices. My family had spent years believing I was the quiet daughter, the dependable one, the person who would always come back and fix the damage. They were wrong. I was still capable of helping. I had simply stopped helping people hurt me. The company was gone, not completely. The employees were still working. The projects were still moving forward. But the Donovan name was no longer above the door. And for my mother, that was worse than losing money. She had spent her entire life protecting the appearance of success. Now everyone knew the truth. The family business had collapsed because of debt, deception, and years of pretending. My father accepted a position as a paid technical advisor for the new employee-owned company. He no longer had control, but for the first time, he had peace. My mother refused to speak to me for nearly 4 months. Then, one afternoon, she appeared at one of my professional lectures. I didn't know she was there until the event ended. She was standing near the back of the room. Your presentation was good, she said. Thank you. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't understand most of it. I almost smiled. You never asked. She looked down. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said, I watched you speak for an hour. I waited. I realized I don't actually know what you do. The words hurt, but they were honest. You could learn, I said. She nodded. Then she took a breath. I also realized something else. What? The way we talked about you made it easy not to notice you. I said nothing. My mother had finally understood what I had known for years. They had not simply underestimated me. They had created a version of me that was convenient to underestimate. The quiet daughter, the single daughter, the difficult daughter, the daughter who was always available when they needed something, but never important enough to ask what she wanted. My mother asked if she could meet Daniel. Not yet, I said. Her expression fell. But she nodded. And that was the first boundary she had ever accepted without arguing. A few weeks later, Natalie sent me an email. Not a text. Not a phone call. An actual email. The subject line read, I owe you the truth. I almost deleted it. Instead, I opened it. She admitted everything. She admitted removing my name from my work. She admitted authorizing the false representation of my role. She admitted that she had known about the financial crisis long before I did. And she admitted something I had never expected. She had intentionally made jokes about my personal life because she was afraid people would compare us. She thought that if everyone saw me as lonely, unsuccessful, and behind in life, they would never question why she was the family's favorite. I read the email twice. Then I closed my laptop. I did not forgive her immediately. I did not invite her to dinner. I did not tell her everything was fine. Instead, I sent one sentence through my attorney. I acknowledge your correction. That was all. Because an apology could be sincere without immediately restoring trust. Months later, Natalie asked to meet me. I agreed, but only in a therapist's office. She sat across from me, looking completely different from the woman who had mocked me at dinner. I thought you hated me, she said. No. Then why did you hide your marriage? I looked at her, because I loved my life enough to protect it. Well, she started crying. I let her. For years, I had been expected to comfort everyone who hurt me. This time, I didn't. I didn't punish her. I simply refused to rescue her from the consequences of what she had done. She eventually asked, "Do you think we can ever be sisters again?" I thought about the question. Maybe. Her eyes filled with hope, but not the sisters we were before. She nodded. That was the truth. The old relationship had been built on me staying quiet. On her taking more than she gave. On my family calling disrespect humor. I couldn't go back to that. And I didn't want to. 1 year after the New Year's Eve dinner, Daniel and I returned to the small train station where we had married. There were only a few people with us. My father, Daniel's sister, my closest friend, and after asking permission first, my mother. Natalie was not there. We had begun speaking occasionally, but trust was still being rebuilt. Slowly. Through actions. Not promises. My father brought a cake. My mother brought flowers. And for the first time, nobody asked me to solve anything. Nobody needed a favor. Nobody needed an introduction. Nobody needed my name on a document. They simply sat with me. And that felt strangely unfamiliar. My father looked at my wedding ring. "You used to wear it on a chain," he said. I did. "Why did you stop?" I looked at Daniel. "Because I stopped hiding the life I built." My mother looked down. Then she smiled. Not dramatically. Not for the room. Just quietly. And I realized something. The truth had not destroyed my family. The lies had. The truth had simply stopped covering them. A year passed. The new employee-owned company survived. Not easily. There were difficult months, lost contracts, unexpected expenses. But the people who had actually built the business were finally making the decisions. And slowly, the company began to recover. My father remained involved as a technical advisor, not as the owner, not as the person everyone had to obey. Just as someone whose experience was valuable. For the first time, he seemed comfortable with that. Natalie eventually found work outside the family business. The position was smaller, the salary was lower, and nobody knew her because of our family name. At first, she hated it. Then something unexpected happened. She began to succeed, not because of my contacts, not because of my father's company, not because someone had placed my work under her name, because of her own work. She once told me that was the first time she had ever known exactly what she had earned. I believed her, but believing someone had changed did not mean I immediately trusted them. Those were two different things. My mother changed more slowly. She still had moments when she tried to manage everything. She still occasionally said things like, "You should really give your sister another chance." And I still answered, "That is not your decision." The difference was that she no longer argued. She would take a breath, then say, "You're right." It was a small thing, but sometimes real change is not dramatic. Sometimes it is simply someone finally accepting a boundary without making you defend it for an hour. One evening, my mother sent me a message. I read it while sitting beside Daniel. It said, "I have been thinking about that dinner. I laughed when your sister called you lonely. I told you she was joking, but I knew she wasn't. I knew she was trying to make you feel small. And I let her do it because stopping her would have meant admitting that I had helped create the way she treated you. You deserved a mother who protected your dignity before she needed your help. I'm sorry." I read the message twice. Then I put my phone down. Daniel didn't ask me what it said. He simply waited. "Are you going to answer?" he asked. "Yes." "What will you say?" I thought for a moment. Then I typed, "Thank you for finally saying it clearly. I accept your apology. Trust will take time." I sent it. That was all. No dramatic reunion, no instant healing, no pretending the past had disappeared, just the truth. And for the first time, the truth was enough. A few months later, I was asked to lead the preservation design for a major science museum. The project was larger than anything I had ever worked on. The opening received national attention. During an interview, the reporter asked Daniel what it was like being married to someone whose career had suddenly become so successful. Daniel smiled. Suddenly? The reporter laughed. Daniel looked at me. I was impressed with her long before everyone else noticed. Then he stepped aside. He did not answer the question for me. He did not turn my achievement into a story about himself. He simply gave me the space to speak, and that small gesture meant more to me than he probably realized. Because for most of my life, people had stood in front of me while using things I had created. Now I had someone beside me who understood the difference. People sometimes ask whether revealing my marriage at that dinner was revenge. It wasn't. I didn't marry Daniel to shock my family. I didn't hide him so I could reveal him dramatically one day. I kept my private life private because I had learned that some people treat access like ownership. The truth came out because my sister decided to make my life a joke. And the truth happened to expose everything else they had been hiding. I did not forge my signature. I did not steal my own work. I did not misrepresent my professional credentials. I did not hide the company's debts. And I did not force my family to make the choices they made. I simply stopped protecting them from the consequences. That was the part they hated most. Not that I was angry. Not that I was married. Not even that Daniel was wealthy enough to help them. They hated that I was no longer available, no longer reachable through guilt, no longer willing to trade my peace for their comfort. The family company disappeared, but the employees survived. My father lost control of the business and found something he had lost years earlier: his integrity. My mother lost the perfect image she had spent decades protecting, and slowly learned how to tell the truth without managing everyone's reaction. Natalie lost her status, then eventually began building something that belonged entirely to her. And me? I lost the fantasy that one perfect explanation could make people treat me fairly. That was painful, but it was also freeing, because once I stopped waiting for my family to understand me, I became free to live without their approval. On the anniversary of that New Year's Eve dinner, Daniel and I had dinner at home. There were no relatives, no speeches, no champagne glasses raised for appearances. Just the two of us. At midnight, Daniel looked at me. "Do you ever think about that night?" "Sometimes." "What do you remember most?" I looked down at my wedding ring. Not the laughter. He waited. I remember the silence after I told them the truth. "What did you feel?" I thought about it. Relief. Because I had spent years believing that keeping the peace meant staying quiet. I had confused silence with kindness. I had confused forgiveness with access. And I had confused being needed with being loved. Now I understood something different. Family is not a license to cross every boundary. Love does not require you to keep handing someone the weapon they use against you. Forgiveness does not erase accountability. And a joke that always targets the same person's deepest insecurity is not really a joke. It is a test of how much disrespect everyone else will allow. My sister had asked me if it was difficult to spend New Year's Eve alone. She had expected me to feel embarrassed. Instead, I told her I had been married for almost 2 years. But the truth was bigger than that. I had been living a full life for years. I had built a career. I had built a marriage. I had built friendships. I had built a future. My family simply had not been paying attention. And when they finally looked closely, they discovered that the daughter they thought they could always control had already become someone they could no longer use. The strongest revenge is not always destroying the people who hurt you. Sometimes it is refusing to remain available for disrespect. Sometimes it is building a life that no one can borrow without permission. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop preventing the consequences that someone else worked so hard to create. Because the moment you stop sacrificing your peace to protect someone else's image, you finally get to see what your life looks like when it belongs completely to you. And believe me, that is a kind of freedom no one can take away.